motorcycles. I've done judging of motorcycles in national AACA shows. And I was actually an instructor for Harley Davidson and Motorcycle Safety Foundation from 2006 to 2016 for 10 years. I did that almost every weekend during the summer. Yeah. So talk about busy. That was a busy life. Bill English. I know Larry and everybody knows Bill English and Linda English and
Sure.
that group. So I worked with them.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, is judging starting to fade away right now? I noticed a lot of shows aren't judging anymore. I know my the Father's Day show. We used to judge all the time, and now we're not judging anymore. And what do you say?
I was at that meeting actually where we voted, and I voted for judging, and we lost.
Voted for judging too.
Yeah, we lost. You and I lost that vote.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We just had the cars in Boardman Park for the Mahoney Valley Old Car Club, and I've been the head judge of that for a number of years now. But this year we decided, because of COVID, just everything going on, we decided to have an open show. And we're going to have, let's see, today's Tuesday. So Thursday night, we're going to have a meeting talking about it. I would say 60% of the people preferred not judging and 40% wished we were judging. I think there's still a place for judge shows. I'll be helping out with the Cleveland AACA show up at Patterson Fruit Farm here in a couple of weeks. The AACA still has their judging shows. We still judge. There's a place for it, but I think, there's right now people are into the open shows. And another thing I've noticed is the morning to noon shows where cars and coffee or things like that, where people want to get in early, be done by noon, and go home and be with their family, do other things. So you're right. There's a few things that are moving around in the car show.
You'll be judging at Hershey this year too, right?
Yeah, I plan on it. I mean, everything going on with with COVID or whatever. But at this point, I do want to go there. I missed not being there last year.
Sure, that was a biggie.
I haven't had a vacation in 2 years, so I need something to look forward to like that.
We're usually there for 4 days, and it's a lot of fun.
I'm usually there for 2 or 3 days. But it's the Super Bowl for us. Yeah.
Is anyone going to Carlisle Corvette show this year?
No.
I've been to Carlisle, but I'm not going this year now.
But you know what, Mike, you were a judge. You were our head judge at the Street Scene Car and Custom Bike Show. I'm going to tell you right now, we had a lot of people asking if we were a judge show, and we are an open show now. And it's hard to get judges. It's hard to get people to commit.
Sure.
That's where we ran into problems. And I don't know if your car club, Rick, that ran into problems of people committing to do that.
Yeah, we're an older club. We're a very old club right now. A lot of guys just don't want to do it anymore, or they're dying off, But
Rick, if I could make a comment on that vote that night, I think and I'm just being honest, what was amazing to me was it is an older club, and it was the wives that were voting no. And they voted. I'm like, well, you don't judge anyway.
They don't judge anyway. I don't think we ever had a female.
They don't want their husbands judging.
Yeah.
I don't want to judge. I'm like, well, you don't judge anyways. What are you voting for?
So if you also own a car appraiser, motorcycle appraiser, and do you see a little bit of a trend changing in that of getting? I'm sure the years have changed. And what's been brought to you has changed over the time you've done that. What do you see trend-wise doing, in the car and motorcycle realm
I think I've done more cars than motorcycles, and I think with the cars you're seeing. I don't want to call them modern classics because that would be kind of different, but you're seeing people who are younger than me. I'm 56. Maybe these folks are in their 40s and they're buying the cars they saw, like a C3 or C4 Corvette, for instance. Okay. And you're starting to see a little bit more modern type cars. They're not so much the old cars, Mustangs, Camaros, things like that. You're seeing more of those. So that would be something. Lately, I feel bad because of my work. I've been so busy last year and a half, but Dave Bialski, who I work with at Mahoney and Auto.
We had him on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, he's a good man, and he's had to take on a lot of work that I can't go do or help him because of my work, my day job, and I feel bad I haven't been able to do as much. But we've noticed that people want their cars reappraised. I have a gentleman who had his car. I think I appraised his car 3 years ago. And he wants it reappraised because the values are going up so much right now. So
it's crazy. It's crazy right now.
Yeah. Now, Bob, have you seen a lot of values of your stuff go up? Larry also. And have you watched that rise or fall in your time lately? With the prices.
With what we do with vintage dirt bikes, and that's kind of a niche. Absolutely, they're going. If you can prove that somebody won a championship or touched that bike, or if Steve McQueen even drove by it and waved at it, it's just
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's the pricing at the auctions these days, and bikes that people don't even really understand. They just, like the looks of it. They think it's an investment. The pricing has gone crazy. Now there is a kind of a cap. There's certain bikes, the Honda Elsinores, back in the day, they came onto the scene and just, they were the bike to have. Those bikes are just, they're out of sight. They're going out of sight. 73, 74, 75, that era. And it's crazy, but there is kind of a cap, Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they've gone nothing but up for sure.
C3 or C4 Corvette, which is 84 to 96. Last year, you could get an 85, which is first year tuned poured. Probably pick that car up for 35 to, if it was really nice, $5,000.
Yeah.
That same car now, I've seen guys running 84s and 85s and asking almost, well, they were really, really nice, but asking $10,000.
Well, Rick, I've got to mention this.
Except Thunderbirds went down in value, I think.
Rick's
going up. Yeah, mine went way up.
I was going to mention your Camaro. Rick used to have an 87 Camaro convertible. Now it was one of what? One of 500 built?
Yeah, there wasn't many of them. Yeah.
But again, I remember you sold that a few years ago. But what the value of that would be now? And you probably got double for it now. Is what I'm thinking. It was really pristine condition, but it was one of what, 500. I don't know what number yours was.
Yeah, I can't remember either right now.
Yeah, but stuff like that's going up.
There's an old saying in the Corvette world, especially, that the Corvette you first laid eyes on as a kid is the Corvette you want when you grow older. So for me, for instance, it was a C3, because that to me is the first Corvettes I saw running around out there were C3s. And I had a 79 with really super crazy low miles on it. I had for many years, and that was a C3. And so there is something to that. And I think as we all get older, and then the 30 and 40-year-olds are getting older, they want to buy that C4. They want to buy those cars that they grew up looking at, and admiring back in the day.
I still want a first generation bet. I don't care.
Good luck with that.
That's what I want, and I didn't
at your house.
But as far as, have you ever? And again, I have to get these in, because did you ever have somebody say, "Oh, Mike, can you appraise my car?" And you look at this thing going, "Oh my God, I can't appraise this car because it's so bad." I love that end of it. Have you ever gotten somebody like that? It's like, this car is really not worth.
No, but I could tell you stories close to that. I've had cars that they wanted me to appraise, and one of the things I've learned to do is say, how much do you think it's worth? Because if I see the car and I'm thinking in my mind, okay, it's probably a $30,000 car, and they think it's worth like 70. I'll say, well, he'll say, well, I think it's worth 70. Why is this? Is before I do any work. I'm just talking. And I said, well, why is that? And sometimes I've learned, because I put a lot of time, like probably too much time. I put a lot of time in my appraisals to really dig deep in how much these cars are worth. And if someone's way out of whack on an expectation, I've walked away from that and walked away from the money and said, look, one guy in particular, I won't name names, but I won't even say the name of his car, what it was. But I told him that. I said, look, your car, it was a, what do they call it? When they make it look like a car that it isn't. It didn't come off the assembly line that way. A clone, thank you, couldn't think of the word. It was a clone. It was a nice clone, a really nice clone, very well done. It was worth some money, but not nearly what he thought it was. So when I spent the time with him, I did take pictures and everything. I ended up telling him the truth, and he says, well, then I don't want to appraise. And I didn't appraise, and that's okay. lost a couple hours, who cares? You move on. I felt like if I ever ran into him at a car show, and I have, by the way, a couple of car shows, I'd rather have a friend, someone who's not going to be mad at me. So
Mhm.
I've stepped aside. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Colognes are worth a lot of money, but they're probably
They are,
worth,
yes.
they're probably worth half as much. You say like you get a Yanko, someone clones
Correct.
a Yanko or something like that.
Correct.
So, but
Yeah,
people think, oh, I got a clone Yanko, it's worth a lot of money.
Right.
No,
The
it's not how it
GT
goes.
That's exactly
A
right.
lot of guys
Mhm.
take Tempest and Le Mans and clone them, especially the 66 and 67. And then they clone them into GTOs. And honestly, if you put the suspension together and you put the engine and transmission that goes in it, and you do all the other stuff that made it a GTO, what's the difference then? And I guess I
Well,
would
yeah.
want to ask Mike that. What is
Sure.
the difference if a
The
guy
VIN.
can show
Yeah,
paperwork, build it like just exactly like it would come from the factory?
And that's a great question. So let me try to give you the best answer. So let's say that car, if it didn't have all that done to it, was worth 25,000, but the real one's worth 50. That car's still going to probably be in the 35 range. It's going to have value, and you're right, it will add value. But it goes back to the VIN number and what did that car come off the assembly line,
Right.
and you just can't change that. And people who are into that typically want what's on that VIN number to be the car that came off the assembly line exactly the way it was. But there is value, and like in that this clone, I think it was a '66 Super Sport Chevelle. I forget what it was. It's been a while, but a great car, but that's the case. It was. I think it was worth like 32, and I think he thought it was worth 60, and it's like, no, it just wasn't. And I walked away, and I could still say hello to the man now, and we're okay, So
I do have one more question. Say somebody has, like, for instance, I ran across some of these C2s, like a 63 split window, or
right.
There's a huge difference in money between a 63 split window and a 64 fastback. I mean, just big money.
Oh yeah.
But what if a guy's got one of those cars, but the motor's not original? How much does that appreciate the value?
Yeah, it could be in percentage, it could be 15-20%.
Really?
Again, it goes back, and Corvette guys are really into that. And that's another thing you have to realize too. The Corvette guys more so than, let's say, a Volkswagen guy.
Yeah.
VWs had motors put in and out of them all the time. Not as big of a deal. Although you can get birth certificates for that, you could still go that route. But yeah, the Corvette guys are into the numbers matching, the transmission, the motor, that they all match together. And there is something to that. And the I would say it goes back to the kind of car it is. If it's a VW really well done, it might not be as bad. But a Corvette, yeah, they're really into that. So I have to make note of that on the appraisal itself, that the numbers are not matching.
When you mean numbers are matching, okay, somebody could buy a 63 Corvette, okay, and then blow the engine and put another 63 engine in it. So that won't match?
It all depends how deep you want to dig. And I don't dig that deep, but the Corvette guys in their clubs and the way they get judged, they will dig deeper into that. And I respect that. I mean, they get really into that. At least it's time period correct. Sometimes you can't prove. It's when someone has a modern engine in it. Exactly. We do that with VWs too.
How about
go ahead.
How about the modern engines with those retro mods? They're crazy.
Yeah, our 53, my wife has a 53 Ford truck. That's her truck. And it's a resto mod. First resto mod I've ever owned. Anyone who knows me knows I like stock, everything perfect. Yeah. But yeah, she's got a resto mod, and we look at it as a really fun truck. It's a fun truck. Right. We didn't buy it to be a big investment.
But I've noticed, like, some of these Corvettes, they might be worth $80,000. They turn them into a retro mod. Man, they like almost double. They doubled their 120.
It depends on the buyers. It depends on the buyers. I mean, I'll give you a VW example. You could take a Beetle or a bus. Let's say a Beetle. Even Corvettes C3s are like this, where they had really strange paint jobs from the 70s or 80s. Someone might like that. And if somebody really wants like a resto paint job from the 70s, for instance, then they're going to pay the money for it. So, and I respect that. But again, what we try to do is there's so many different books and guides and online and all the searching we do. We really want to give a true value of what we believe that car is worth if you're going to sell it, especially for insurance purposes, whether it's a divorce. Get a lot of that with divorces. You'd be surprised. But that, what is the value of this car really worth? So there's always those one-offs that are hard to kind of put a value on.
If you saw the Street Scene show, which, Mike, I guess you weren't at today.
No, he wasn't. I'm
I
surprised
deserve
we
that.
even invited him today.
I almost came over about 1 o'clock. I was like, 1 o'clock. Maybe I'll run over there, but I didn't get over.
But I will tell you this, if you guys remember, there was a heck of a nice Corvette resto mod there.
Yes, it was.
I was,
That was.
Remember that
it's
car?
funny. For all of you that have been asking, when is this show going to be on the air? I am working on it. I just when you said that, I just finished up that interview on the show. So if you're listening to this podcast this week, August 10th is when we're recording this. You're going to listen to this week. Next week, I'm going to have that show done if it kills me. But it takes probably I'll have about 45 hours of editing into that show.
Wow.
Because it takes.
Wow.
You know what? I will watch it, then I feel like I was there.
Yeah.
Forget it, Mike.
No, I'm not even giving you the link to the show.
No,
because
really.
you didn't even show up.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry.
Now, Bob Wentzel has a nice Corvette. I believe, Bob, what is it, 76 or 77?
76 Stingray. Yep.
All
It's
right.
all white, red pinstriping. Oh, it looks original. I don't know if the motor is or not, but Bob would know better. How original is that car, Bob?
It's original except for the paint. It's been painted. And I graduated in '76, and that's what lured me to that car. I wanted a '76 Stingray. I think the last year they made them was '77 Stingray. I think the last year they made a Stingray was '77. But I just I'm not a big car guy, but boy, I love it, and it's a fun car to drive around. It's got ox blood. I think they call it ox blood interior, and it's just a fun car to drive. T-top. I wish I could drive it more, but I'm on a motorcycle most of the time. So, and playing around bikes, but it's right next to me here, sitting in the garage, covered up. So,
Larry, Bob, real quick question. We're talking about originality on these motorcycles, and how does that cross over into what you, of motocross and all that? I am so on the car side of this. I'm trying to learn as much as I can for motorcycles, and thank God for Larry has taught me a ton. But Bob, how does that transfer into what you do? Is there any originality into the on that side?
Yeah. You're talking about the bikes, the people. I mean, we're
motocross, the bikes themselves.
Like I said, everything. It's just if there's certain models and there's certain pros from Europe that help design models and things like that. And if there's a 74, then there's a 74 and a half, then there's a 75 and a 75 and a half that somebody in Europe that was a national champion put their hands on and help design. And there's so many things like that that is so cool to look at the history and understand it. And it's the everything. It's the gear, the clothes, the boots, everything from that era that you can pinpoint came from a certain era, or certain, a lot of that gear and stuff was all European designed, and I know in Italy was a big boot designer, and a lot of the boots came from Italy. It's amazing to dig and continue to dig. And Ted Guthrie, my partner in the Vintage Movement, he's really good at that. He's got magazines cataloged and understands all that. And to me, if those numbers don't match, like you talked about on the Corvettes, that's not a big deal to me. And when Ted does a restoration, depends what you're going to do with it. Are you gonna look at it? Are you gonna ride it? Are you gonna race it? Are you gonna sell it?
That's true.
What are you gonna do with it? So
Right.
that all comes into play where it has to be period correct and exact. I mean, these Honda Elsinores down to the bolts on the levers, they say HM on them, Honda Motors. And if somebody's into that and they see a bolt on that lever that doesn't say HM, they're like,
It's not original.
Blows me away.
yeah, it's not original. So
Mhm.
you've got to really, you've got to really know your stuff. And to certain people, like you said, I forget who said it, but depends who's buying it.
Right.
Hmm.
You
I agree.
said depends
There's
who's buying it.
there's a big cottage market though. Like I started following because I'd had a little bit of a background in road racing, but if you get some of these bikes that not some guys do replicas and they do well selling them, but if you get an original bike that was say raced by Kenny Roberts or raced by Agostini or something like that. There's a huge market. I mean, it's kind of like a different subculture altogether. A lot of people don't think about it, but like in Bob's world, if you've got a bike that is a bike that was ridden by somebody that was famous in the off-road world, whether it was from Europe or Pomeroy or a Lackey or from the United States, that
Yep.
bike has value. And there's a whole culture about that. There's a whole magazine called, what is it, Bob? VX Racing or something?
VMX.
Yeah. And that,
VMX, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that even comes up to the judging part of it, Mike.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've been to the shows where it comes down to the bolt.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
It
Rick
does.
talked about that before, judging even his show.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, especially
how
you
close
go,
has it come with some of these cars and stuff?
well, I tell you what, usually what we do, and everybody does this differently, but like if you go to a Hershey show or one of the big ACA shows, it's all based on points, and you're not really competing against someone else, you're competing against the points, so you get points knocked off. But in our shows like we've done, I always like to have a couple tricks up my sleeve as far as a tie. So if you have two cars, and it happens once in a while, you have two cars that are just super perfect in so many ways, they're so gorgeous, they're just unbelievable. You might look at the gas pedal and the brake pedal, which one is cleaner. We've opened up. One time I had a Mustang in a show. It was Greg Greenwood actually did this. It was between my Mustang and another car, and he's a Chevy guy, which was funny, but he actually opened up the gas cap to see which was cleaner inside. Mine was immaculate, of course, and I ended up winning over the other guy at one of Greg Greenwood's shows.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
he got dogged because he's a Chevy guy, and he got dogged for that. But anyway, so there's a lot of little tricks that trade on that,
Hey, Mike, when you go to these bigger shows, is there any special model you're the best at? Because you got to know a lot of stuff with these cars.
There's a couple different things they do with us, and to a degree, we ask for our first choices. We get like three choices. So I feel comfortable, for instance, C3 Corvettes, the classic Mustangs, Mercedes-Benz. As I started my career as a Mercedes-Benz judge in 1999, I went all schooling for that. So that the Volkswagens, of course, VWs. Things like that. So yeah, you typically poor Ryder, you did a bit of it. You gotta get your VW, but we have we get choices, and then and they get to know you, and then typically, like if I'm judging VWs, for instance, when we go to the judges breakfast at Hershey, I'm sitting around with other VW people. I've judged with them before because we're all VW people, and we know our stuff, because we know, but we are taught at AACA to judge any kind of a car or even motorcycles, but that then we have to go back and we're looking at the cleanliness, is something period correct, even like the distributor cap and the wires, what color were they based upon, in the 1920s or before that versus now, so we go to school for all that, classes. We have to, usually my Friday is spent taking classes, and Saturday's the show. So they keep us busy.
That's a great lead in, because I wanted to ask you, there's a lot of guys that love cars that are now, like me, retired and like to go see cars and that. If you wanted to become a judge, what is the course or the proper route to take to find out about it? And how long does it take to go through some type of training program to be able to be a judge?
Sure, that's a super question. A couple routes. The AACA has their own program. The first time you judge, I forget the exact name they call it now, but you're like a beginner judge, and you judge for fun that first time. You judge real, but it doesn't count. So then, it takes a few years to become a senior master judge, and I did it as quickly as I could. It took me 5 years.
Wow.
So of all, because you had to have points. It was all about, that's a couple of these certificates up here. It's all about my points. That's one way. If you're into a certain type of car, a Mustang, a
Right.
Corvette, a Mercedes-Benz, you can go there. Like I was very active in the Mercedes-Benz club for the whole country. So I went to their judging school. I went to their program. And Pete Lessler, if he's still alive, I hope he is. I haven't talked to him in years, but Pete Lessler is the main judge. He used to live in the area. Thank God I got to, learn from the best, literally the best judges. So there's, and then if you're involved with the Mahoney Valley Old Car Club, you'd probably come in one of my classes because I teach a class on judging too.
And I've been to your
That's kind of
class.
neat.
Yeah, if you really want to learn something, I was at your class, and you learn a ton from
Thanks.
Mike because he's got the screen up and he goes, I think it's 2 hours.
Yeah, about
But-
2 hours.
Yeah, but it was real informative, and there's a lot of people in there learning to judge, and I was
And
honored
personally,
to be in there and invited because it
Is
was.
there a class for VWs? Because I'd like to learn about them. And, I've grown up with them when I was younger, had a girlfriend that drove me around in one when I was in high school, when I was having my license revoked,
Well, Rick knows a lot about them, so he loves them so
Hey,
much.
You
Because
know what?
Rick could teach us.
I did learn a lot. We did 2 shows at Jim's there. Jim's
Yeah, we did.
Volkswagen.
Yeah,
And
I remember that. You
I
did.
really liked the Volkswagen crowd. They're
Yeah,
a fun bunch of people. Anything goes.
The problem with the VW crowd, I'm just going to be honest. I love them dearly, as you know, but they're more about the fun. Like
Sure.
Bob said, they're the fun of just go out and driving them, and that's
Mhm.
awesome. I'm not knocking it.
Yeah.
But they're not so into the judging part as much there. But if you get into AACA judging, you're going to judge VWs there. Then you got to go through that whole deal. I was the vice president of the National Vintage Volkswagen Club of America for 2 years, from 2016 to 2018. One of the things I was pushing was to have a judging program for VWs. I could get no interest started at all. They're just
Really?
so laid back. Let's just have our cars and have fun. And that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with that.
that seems like
They're
best
hippies.
to be.
Yeah.
They're out there to have fun because
They are, man. Let's have fun with our cars.
That's all
There's
they
nothing
care.
wrong with that.
What was that, Bob?
I said they're old hippies.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
yes, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, a lot of the viewpoint of the VWs is, we all grew up with them and they were just throwaway cars, but now they've gotten the where they're in its status. Because as you well know, I've said 100 times I was kicked out of a car club for buying a VW. And
Oh yeah, that's
nothing
changed.
burned me
They're not-
more because I had
That's
2
changed.
American-made cars. But as soon as I got that VW, I was out. They kicked me out, and that was it. They didn't want to talk to me because I bought.
That's
a
changed
car.
drastically with car
Yes.
clubs. I tell you real quick, the show we just had at Boardman Park, I was so excited with how many young people showed up. We had
Mhm.
young
You had a
people.
good crowd there.
Oh
Right.
man, that made my day. I was
Yeah.
like living on the clouds with the young people showing
Sure.
up with their cars, and I talked with every one of them and welcomed them and thanked them profusely
Yes.
for coming out. I even was on the microphone at the end with the awards before the rains were coming, saying, "Hey, thanks to the young people for coming out. We got to reach out to these young people and
Mhm.
understand. Young people love cars. They just love different cars differently.
Sure.
I really
And
believe
they're-
that.
Sure.
Their
We gotta be
bolts,
open to
their
that.
nuts, their engines, they're all, and as long as
They-
they work on them.
Yeah.
Motorcycles, Bob, your son Quinn. I mean, he's 27, but he's been into it. We need people like that in this
Yes,
realm
yes.
of cars and motorcycles to keep it going. My son's into the cars. He hangs out with a bunch of his buddies, and that's
He's a
something
great kid.
that's one odd thing I want to work on for the next street scene show. I want to get the tuners out.
Yes.
I mean, we had a few, but I want to get more trophies for them. I want them out at that show with us.
Tuners, rat rods. I mean, those are probably the 2 most popular. In trucks, you get your Broncos and the trucks, man. They're into their trucks. They're into the.
I want to see a nice, what I haven't seen, I was just talking to my buddy. We grew up in the 80s and, we partied in the 90s, but we had the sport truck craze come through. I haven't seen a nice S10 Ranger or anything sport truck in a lot of years. I don't know what happened to them because that was the big craze. You lowered them, you put a system in it. You had those goofy license plates on the back of the, the beds that they put sideways. Where happened to them all? I
I don't
see.
know. Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, you know what the biggest problem and the biggest concern I have is, when I was growing up and having a family and working, I could still afford something that I maybe could work on. Nowadays, when you look at the cars that are out there, what is it that a kid that's in his middle 20s that's starting a family, what is it that he could possibly buy? So what is left is the tuner import market.
Right.
So those cars, I mean, if you're lucky to get a Honda VTEC or something like that, okay. But, you know, these kids can then put a turbo or the nitrous on it. But, you know, when you're out there and you're looking at anything, I mean, anything, I don't care if it's a Chevelle or a Corvette or a C10, which is skyrocketing.
Mhm.
You know, there isn't much out there. There's slim pickings for a kid. You know, even a 79 Monte Carlo, that body style was great for drag racing and that. You know, everything's up there. So I hope that we have a correction in the market at some point where younger people can get in. But I think you're right, Greg. I think the way to go is to reach out to them through this show, through the tuner market. I think there's a lot of cars that kids can take, even those older Subarus.
You know,
and can pick
I have
relatively-
to say this, what caught my eye today, and, you know, somebody who passed me, I was on the road with a Cobalt SS. Okay. You know how cheap you can get those for? And if you think about the SS Cobalt model, how much horsepower did those have? They were pushing like close to 200, 220, 230 out of the four-cylinder. You turbo that motor out, and that's something they can get into for dirt cheap. I guess it's just all how you look at it. You get a newer Civic, or you get a newer, you know, a Cobalt that's 10 or 12 years old, or whatever it is, and they're going to get into that.
You know, VW has made some models. You would know better than I, Greg, but they made some models like the GTI Golf and that even the Sirocco, the older Siroccos. You can still find them. You know, they were pretty quick.
Yeah, stick shift too. Yeah, those were cool cars.
They used to race those GTIs, right?
Did you?
No, they used to though. I used to see them on the track all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, guys, I think something worth mentioning. He mentioned Quinn 10 years ago. Quinn he was not even interested at all in the vintage bikes that I had. He was kind of looking at them, but, you know, hey, Dad, I'm gonna, you know, I want to ride this modern stuff, you know. And this past winter, a bike we bought at Mid Ohio, a prototype Trials Hodaka that never even went into production. We found one at Mid Ohio 3 or 4 years ago. He completely redid this thing over the winter and refurbished it and just did an absolute wonderful job. And I couldn't be more proud of him.
What year was that?
He 1970.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, and it's just a beautiful bike. I think Larry's seen it. He just did a wonderful job. And so it's starting to, you gotta, you know, and I really didn't push him. I think he was smart enough to figure it out on his own, but now he's got 2 or 3 other bikes he wants to redo. And that's what Larry's talking about. You got to get these kids interested in the passion of it, for sure.
Well, I know my son bought an 04, oh my God, it was a Suzuki. You know, he was going to redo it too, as it sits in my driveway or my garage, you know. But
you got room in that garage?
Some of the sport bikes maybe now. I mean, some of these the old Ninjas and that are, you know, back in the late 80s and that.
Well, they're collectible. I'll tell you, a good collectible bike is a Suzuki Katana, but one of the first 2 years are very collectible.
Okay, there you go.
But I'll tell you, but I'd like to have a whole show on the mini bike sickness that Bob and I have, especially Bob, because he has that Pinto or whatever that thing was. Made me go get it powder coated. What was that thing called?
It's J.C. Penney. It was called a Golden Pinto. J.C. Penney sold them, and had a 3.5 horse Tecumseh motor. Was the mini bike motor of the era, and one of the first mini bikes with shocks on the back, and pretty cool stuff. I've got several of them.
That's Bob's first mini bike. But a good story is when I showed up at this very famous Harley Davidson guy, which I won't mention, and he does powder coating. And I show up with this mini bike frame, and he looks at me and he goes, "What is this piece of?" And bloop. And then and I go, "Well, I don't care. He doesn't care how much it costs. He wants it to be golden."
Yeah.
And the guy goes, "You know what? I can't believe." He goes, "You ought to just throw this thing in the trash." But I'll tell you what, he powder coated it. It looked great. Bob stuck it all back together. And if you had a photo from Bob back in the day when he was like 8 and a mini bike, he's got the same mini bike now.
Well, you know what?
That's awesome.
I have to stop you right there because since I'm the host of I'm hosting the computer part of the show. The sickness of mini bikes and that, and Rick knows all about that. I have to show you. What is that?
Oh,
Oh,
no.
look at that.
Oh,
Dude,
that's
yeah.
classic.
That's mine. And
You still have it?
Yes, I do. And
Let's ride that.
That is cool.
I can't fit in it. I'm too fat.
Looks like a little mini VW dune buggy.
Yeah, it's like a Myers-Manx. You remember
Yeah,
those?
that mini one. Yeah.
That was made 2
That
years.
is really cool.
Anyway,
Looks like
I'm
an
sorry.
Arctic. Looks like an Arctic Cat. Arctic Cat made something like that. What is it? What's the brand name of it?
It is not a Manx. It's
Dune crab and dune buggy? Or?
I can't. I have to. Having a mental block here. But they made it 2 years.
Now, you know Bob's going to be at your house tomorrow trying to buy that.
But yeah, the sick thing is, my buddy had that one when I was a kid, and I never forgot it. And I went on the search and had to find one and restored it. So it's sitting in my garage too. But
And by the way,
guarantee you, Ted Guthrie will know exactly what that is. He's into that kind of stuff.
oh,
He'll
he
know
did
exactly
a whole thing on the motorcycle show on that, remember?
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, we got a couple minutes left. Bob, I wanted to hit you up. What are your future plans here for racing and motocross and all that?
Well, our future. I mean, I'll soon be 64. I'm trying to look into retirement, and me and Ted are looking to hopefully, ramp up the vintage movement. And I've got the buildings. I've got the acreage out here to do what we want to do, and then really, still, it's all about. I do have a daughter. People ask me all the time, "Geez, I never knew you had a daughter." My daughter lives in Chicago, but Quinn's racing career is first and foremost, and we're loading, and he's out here working right now. We're heading off to the Tennessee knockout this weekend. The Europeans are all in town. Hard enduro. It's our Indy 500 of racing. It's a big deal, and we want to give Quinn, my wife and myself both. We take turns going to races and making sure he's supported, and he has a lot of other support. He's a pro rider. He has support at the races, and we want to make sure he does his thing, and we give him the opportunity to, continue to do what he likes. And Larry said, I'm not living vicariously, but man, I kind of am, So, we really enjoy it. We don't know any better. That's what we do. We're out here every night working. And if I'm not working on my own stuff, I'm helping Quinn and helping Ted, and it's just what we do. And in the meantime, we try to have fun and ride. And I'm hoping to do some Trans-American Trail stuff. I've never been to Alaska on a motorcycle. That's really on my bucket list. I have an adventure bike, a 990 KTM that we do a lot of adventure rides on. And that's really, I'd really like to just take off for about a month and head to Alaska here within the next few years, for sure.
It's a Muskin Dune Cat. I'm sorry, it just popped in my head. Muskin Dune Cat. Mike, your plans? You gonna keep judging? You're gonna keep? I know what you're doing with your VWs.
Yeah, well, two things real quick. I'm slowing down a bit on the judging. I used to do about 13 or 14 shows a year, and it's just too much. And I got to slow down a bit on that. As far as the cars, yeah, I'm selling two of my my babies because my wife and I have decided to go back to what we love about cars. And we wanted a car. I was saying this before we got live on the show here, but I wanted a car that we could just jump in and go, and really go. So we added a 2002 Lexus SC 430, a convertible.
Very nice car.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Thanks. It's beautiful. But anyway, so that's what we're doing. And so, getting back into the basics of why I love cars, why she loves cars so much. And that's what we're doing now.
Yep. Okay. Rick, got any more questions?
Darn honeybees in here. What the heck?
Oh, the
Anyway,
bees.
I'm not even gonna let
Time to talk about bees tonight.
We didn't talk that about Mike.
I
We
thought
can say
Rick
that
was
out loud.
talking with that little buzzing noise.
No,
Yeah.
now that Mike is really into honeybees.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm a C. Yeah, I could. Yeah, that'd be another show. Talk about bees.
Yeah, I just
Well,
thought I'd throw that in, Mike.
I tell you what, if we let Larry and Bob talk about their sickness, we'll have a whole show about their sickness of mini bikes and that, and all the classic stuff like that. We'll talk about honeybees.
Talk about bees.
Honeybees.
Larry, do you have anything to quickly add?
Yeah, very quickly, I'd say if Bob Wentzel ever invites you to go mountain biking at Ray's Mountain Bike Indoor Park, politely say no. That way you won't go to the hospital. Also, I'd like to personally thank Greg, because who would bring his 6-year-old son, drive all the way from God knows out there in New Middletown or wherever, all the way to the north side of Youngstown to meet me at a place, and then crawl under the car, lift it up, look around and say, well, it's pretty good. And then, who would do that? So I want to personally thank you for doing that for me, Greg.
Did you see the 357 under his jacket there?
Well, his shirt did slip up, and I did see
that. Don't go anywhere without that anymore.
Yeah, not a bad move. But I thoroughly enjoy being on this show. I've got a lot of feedback and compliments. Everybody knows me not as Larry Ward. My actual real name is Corey Ward's dad.
Yeah.
I want to introduce. They never say, this is Larry Ward or Mr. Ward. They always introduce me as, hey, come over here. This is Corey Ward's dad. Yeah. Really? So, that's kind of neat. But one of the things my son told me, and I thought it was odd because I never thought of it. He goes, Dad, you're much more relevant now on that TV show than you ever were on the radio show. And I'm like, well, since you never listened to the radio show, I don't know how you could say that, but I wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity to have my friends and myself on each week. And I love Bob Wentzel. I like to call Bob and Diane the first family in racing in our area. The Pentons probably are the first family nationally. But when you think of how things should be done from a parenting standpoint, how a business should be operated, and how people should be treated, I think Bob and Diane are truly the first family in racing and in motorcycling. And I'm really proud that they call me and I call them friends. So thank you, Bob, for coming on, buddy.
I really appreciate that, Larry. And I tell you, we got to get Quinn on. You guys will all love Quinn. He's very professional, and he does a way better job on shows like this than I do. So he's really good.
And Rick,
he's a little more technically oriented, Bob, and so he won't glitch.
Rick, anything to add before we head on out the door here?
Yeah, thanks, Bob, for being on the show. It was really nice. Learned a lot from you. And Mike, you better be at the Street Scene Car and Bike Show next year. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, well,
hopefully I'll see you in Hershey this year, huh?
Yeah, I do. I plan on going to Hershey, definitely.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to the Street Scene Power podcast or watching on Armstrong Neighborhood Channel. Thank you to Bob Wentzel and to Mike Klem for joining us. For Corey Ward's dad and non-bug Rick Guerrera,
we'll see you down
the road.